Conversation 1, or Love of Pets. Hello, this is 6 Million English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm George. It's said that your personality is reflected in your pet, an animal that you keep in your home as a companion and treat kindly. Dog people are supposed to be friendly, enthusiastic, and loyal, whereas cat people are introverted, proud, and sensitive. Are you a dog person or a cat person, Neil?
I'm definitely a dog person, Georgie. I want a pet that's friendly and loves me, not a lazy cat that sits around all day waiting for food.
Whether you're a dog person, a cat person, or have a goldfish, hamster, or parrot for a pet, the British are well known as a nation of animal lovers. In the United Kingdom, 52% of owners describe their pet as their best friend, and in 2021, 18 million homes had at least one pet, meaning that for the first time there were more households with a pet than without.
In this program, we'll be hearing how our relationship with pets has changed over the centuries, and as usual, we'll be learning some useful new vocabulary as well. But first, I have a question for you, Georgie. Nowadays, thanks to the internet, modern pets are getting online. So what percent of dogs and cats in the UK do you think have their own social media profile? Is it A, 7%, B, 17%, or C, 70%?
Sounds crazy, but I guess 70% of British pets have their own social media account.
Okay, Georgie, we'll find out the answer later in the program. Cats using Instagram and dogs on TikTok may be a strange new development, but our relationship with pets has continually changed throughout history. In the 80s, people started using the word pet to describe the emotional connection they felt to a special animal, and gradually it became normal to keep pets indoors.
Here, Jane Hamlet, professor of history and author of a new book, The Pet Revolution, explains to BBC Radio 4 program Thinking Aloud how early British attitudes to pets were based on economics.
I am Prof. Jane Hamlet. First of all, on a very practical level, living standards are gradually increasing across that period, and it becomes more possible to keep pets if you have more disposable income. But I think in British culture, in the 19th century in particular, home and family increasingly celebrate, and keeping a pet becomes a way of bringing animals into your home life, and also really expressing what it means to be part of the family. Animals become part of that.
Family pets became more popular as people's living standards increased. Living standards, which are also known as the standard of living, refer to the level of material comfort people live in. It's connected to their disposable income, the money left over to spend on things you want, after paying tax and other living expenses. In other words, as people got richer, they had more money to spend on luxury items, including pets.
And by the Victorian era, this included new and exotic pets such as tigers, lions, monkeys, and elephants, which were shipped back from around the British Empire. Even the famous Victorian writer Charles Dickens owned a pet raven.
It was also the Victorians who first described Britain as a nation of dog lovers, a phrase they used to reflect the idea they had of themselves, as Professor Jane Hamlet explained it to BBC Radio 4 program Thinking Aloud.
In the Victoria era, dogs were very much to the top pet, and you can see that the value that were often associated with dogs, so loyalty, truthfulness, and steadfastness. All of these qualities we also celebrate by the Victorians of key part of the Victorian manly character, so dogs really fit the bill.
The Victorians admired the qualities associated with dogs. Qualities like self-confidence and loyalty, being strong and unchanging in support of your friends. While dogs were considered strong and manly, cats were feminine and weak. So for the Victorians, dogs really fitted the bill and even meaning they were suitable for a particular purpose.
Britain's relationship with pets really has changed over the years, from the mainly British Bulldog to funny cats on videos on YouTube. It's been quite a journey. Maybe it's time to reveal the answer to my question, Georgie.
Right, you asked me how many dogs and cats in the United Kingdom had their own social media profile, and I guessed it was 70%.
Which was the correct answer. What I still don't understand is how they get their posts on the keypad. Anyway, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned in this program about the love the British have for their pets. Animals you keep in your home as a companion and treat kindly.
A cat person is someone who likes or prefers cats, unlike a dog person who prefers dog.
Living standards or standard of living refers to the level of material comfort in which people live.
Your disposable income in the money left over to spend on things you want after paying taxes and your living expenses.
Loyalty means having a strong and unchanging support for your friends.
And finally, if something fits the bill, it's suitable to serve a particular purpose. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. Join us again soon for more trending topics and useful vocabulary here at 6 Minutes English. Goodbye for now.
Bye!
Conversation 2. Why you need a good night's sleep? Hello, this is 6 Minutes English from BBC Learning English. I'm Georgie and we're ready to start. Phil?
Oh, sorry, Georgie. I was just catching 40 wings. You know, getting some shut-eye, dozing, taking a nap. I was sleeping.
Sleeping at work? Phil, how could you?
I know. Sorry. I didn't sleep well last night.
I'll forgive you this time, but make sure you go to bed early tonight because getting a good night's sleep is incredibly important. For example, did you know that people who get enough sleep live about 5 years longer than people who don't?
Wow, so a good night's sleep can lengthen your life. In this program, we'll be finding out more about the benefits of sleep and, as usual, learning some useful new vocabulary as well.
But first, now that you have woken up, I have a question for you. Do you know how much of the average person's life is spent asleep? Is it A, a half, B, a quarter, or C, a third?
I think we spend about a third of our lives sleeping.
Okay, well, I'll reveal the correct answer at the end of the program. The question for why humans sleep is not easy to answer. In terms of evolution, why would it make sense to go unconscious every night, leaving yourself vulnerable to danger? It can only mean that the benefits gained from sleep are huge. Here, science journalist Jean Smith explains some of these benefits to BBC Radio 4 program Inside Science.
So we probably all experience this, that if you had a bad night's sleep and then you try and do some work and you just can't concentrate, your brain isn't in the right state to take in new information. But we also need to sleep after we've learned new things because that's when our brain consolidates the information, takes it from short-term storage to long-term storage, fits it in with other things we already know. That old adage of if you got a problem, sleep on it. Your brain does actually work on things during the night, and you can often wake up and have solved the problem in your sleep.
When we sleep, our brains refresh, leaving us feeling rested in the morning. But after a bad night's sleep, it's more difficult to concentrate. We can't take in or understand new information.
We also have the saying, if you have got a problem sleeping on it, to sleep on it means to delay making a decision until you have had time to think about it. But that also turns out to be true scientifically speaking. During sleep, your brain really can work out problems and find solutions.
But what about the other side of the story? What happens when you get too little sleep or not at all? Here's Jeannie Smith again, talking to BBC Radio for her program Inside Science.
Sleep deprivation is a form of stress, and we know that when you are stressed, your sort of light or sleep responses inactivate and that cause all tense changes in your body that focus on immediately survival over long-term health. But if we are chronically stressed, money worries, or a stressful job, or something that's going on forever, or life, or chronic sleep deprivation that's causing that level of stress, then you might constantly have a down immune system, which can then lead to all this knock of problems.
Having none or too little of something important is known as deprivation. Sleep deprivation is stressful for the body, so stressful that it activates a fight or flight response, changes in the human body in response to a life-threatening situation, which make us either stay and fight the threat or run away from it.
As well as a fight or flight response, the stress of not getting enough sleep over a longer period also creates problems including heart disease and a weakened immune system. Lack of sleep has these knock-on effects. It causes other things to happen but not directly.
Now, do you see why it's important to get a good night's sleep, Phil? Plus, it will stop your sleeping at work again. Right, I think it's time to reveal the answer to my question.
Yes, you asked me how much of the average person's life is spent asleep, and I said it was about a third.
Which was the correct answer. Assuming you sleep 8 hours a day, the average person will sleep for 2,029,961 hours in their life, or around 1/3 of their life. Okay, let's recap the vocabulary we learned, starting with the phrases catch for the wings, get some, shut eye, doze, and take a nap, all of which means to sleep.
When someone takes in information, they understand it.
If you have a problem and you sleep on it, you delay making a decision until you have had time to think about it.
Deprivation is an absence or too little of something important such as food or sleep.
The fight or flight response describes changes in the human body in response to a dangerous situation, which makes us either stay and fight the threat or run away from it.
And finally, if something has a knock-on effect, it causes other results indirectly. Once again, our 6 minutes are up, but remember to join us again next time for more training topics and useful vocabulary. Here at 6 Minute English. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Conversation 3. Learning a new food culture. Hello, this is 6 Minutes English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Beth.
Every country has its own favorite foods, so when people leave home and move to a different country, getting used to the new food, there can be a surprise.
Food can have strange sounding names. If you know what a toad is, it's an animal. very similar to a frog. You might be surprised to hear that a famous English meal is toad in the hole. Don't worry though, it's made with sausages, not toads.
In this program, we're exploring people's first impression of a new culture through its food. We'll be hearing how two women, one a refugee, the other a dietitian, adapted to the food of their new home. And as usual, we'll be learning some useful new vocabulary too.
But first, I have a question for you, Neil. A British summer will be complete without a traditional cream tea. Scones, cream, and jam eaten with a cup of tea. It sounds lovely, but strangely, there have been many arguments over cream teas. So, is a cream tea debate about A. Whether to drink tea or coffee, B. Whether to put cream or jam onto the scone first, or C. Whether strawberry or raspberry jam is better?
Well, I think the controversy is whether to add cream or jam first.
Okay, Neil. I'll reveal the correct answer later in the program. Natalia Kachenko arrived in the Netherlands after leaving her home in Ukraine. Following the Russian invasion, she moved in with Weronika Roszewska, who's originally from Poland, and her family, starting them on a journey to open their own restaurant, Natalia's Kitchen. Here's Natalia talking with BBC World Service program, The Food Chain.
Of course. At first, it felt like I am well out of what they call my comfort zone. When you stay in a certain environment, you get used to it. But when you move to another country where you live and work, your experience difficult and you have to adapt to get used to local foods. Here they don't have some of the staples we had in Ukraine. Ingredients are different, and so you start working with local foods. Find replacements, cook with what you have.
At first, Natalia felt out of her comfort zone, a familiar situation in which someone feels secure and in control. She had to adapt to her new life in the Netherlands. She had to change in order to succeed in her new situation.
Some of the staple ingredients Natalia used in Ukraine weren't available in the Netherlands. A staple is a basic and important type of food that is regularly eaten by a large portion of the population. So, Natalia adapted her recipes, replacing Ukrainian with Dutch ingredients to create a new kind of cooking which her customers loved.
Our second story involves Rachel Winter Roach, who left her home in England to work on the sunny island of Tobago in the southern Caribbean. Here, Rachel explains some of the food challenges she faced to BBC World Service program, The Food Chain.
When I came out of the Caribbean, I was really in for a shock when it came to flavoring. At season food, and season is really an integral part of food preparation here. Here the season is multiple layers. It took me a while to get used to it because everybody has their way of the season and their little treats. And there are no quantities, so it really takes a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error. And I think my family did not always appreciate the errors in the trial.
When Rachel moved to Tobago, she was in for a shock. The phrase to be in for a shock means to be sure of experiencing a surprising or unpleasant situation. In Rachel's case, the surprise involved seasoning, the salt, herbs, and spices added to food to enhance the flavor.
The Caribbean seasoning is a big deal. Everyone has their own seasoning recipe, including little tweaks or small adjustments, which they have added themselves. It took time for Rachel to develop her seasoning skills, mainly through trials and error, a way of solving problems by trying a number of different methods and learning from the mistakes you make along the way.
Whether you're fleeing war, starting a new job, or enjoying a cream tea, it seems there's a lot to learn about a place from its food, including Britain. So, I think it's time to reveal the answer to my question, Neil. Why is the traditional British cream tea controversial?
Well, I guess it was because people disagree about whether cream or jam should go on the scone first.
Which was the correct answer? And anyone who says it's jam first is just wrong. Okay, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned in this program, starting with comfort zone, a situation in which you feel comfortable and in control.
To adapt means to change so as to successfully fit in with a new situation.
A staple is a basic and important type of food that is regularly eaten by a large portion of the population.
The phrase to be in for a shock means to be guaranteed to experience a surprising or unpleasant situation.
A tweak is a small adjustment to something in order to improve it.
And finally, if you solve a problem by trial and error, you try a number of different methods and learn from the mistakes you made. Once again, our 6 minutes are up, and remember to join us again here at 6 Minutes English. Goodbye for now.
Bye!
Bye. Conversation 4. Can music mend a broken heart? Hello, this is 6 Minutes English from BBC Learning English. I am Sam.
And I'm Neil. There are a million songs about falling in love, and just as many about being broken-hearted. Do you remember the first time you fell in love, Sam?
Yes, I was 14 and it seemed like every word of every love song had been written just for me.
There's a strong connection between music and love, as Shakespeare famously wrote, "If music be the food of love, play on." In this program, we'll be meeting a singer-songwriter who used music to express her feelings or falling in love, and later to mend her broken heart when the relationship ended. And as usual, we'll be learning some new vocabulary as well.
But first, I have a question for you, Neil. Your mention of Shakespeare reminds me of Romeo and Juliet, these famous lovers who fell in love despite their fighting families, only to die tragically young. But in which Italian city was Romeo and Juliet set? Was it A. Florence, B. Venice, or C. Verona?
I think it must be one of the world's most romantic cities, Florence.
Okay, Neil. You'll reveal the answer later in the program. Julia Jacqueline is an Australian singer-songwriter whose songs Don't Know How to Keep Loving You reached number 8 in the Australian pop charts. Her song lyrics explore feelings of falling in love as well as the pain of breaking up.
Julia sang her reading from experience. Several years ago, she quit her band in Australia and bought a one-way ticket to London to be with her boyfriend and soulmate, the person who she felt a special romantic connection with. But things didn't work out as she'd hoped, and she found herself alone and working in a depressing job.
Julia turned to music, pouring her feelings of lost love into the song which later became her first album as a successful grown-up musical. So when BBC World Service program, the conversation spoke with her. They asked Julia what she would tell her younger self.
The one thing that was just very heartbreaking for me at that age was also singing I guess about love. I found that really difficult. You know, now when a young person is like really in love at 14, I know that as an adult, all your instructors are telling them, you know that it's probably not going to work, you know? And it's like just relax or whatever, but I remember at the time just desperately waiting to be valued by adults. and not be told that I was being stupid. I don't know. I'll probably just be like, yeah, go for it.
Many teenagers have a romantic ideal of everlasting love, often in contrast to the beliefs of adults, which Julia calls cynicism. The belief that something will not be successful or that the people involved are not sincere.
The young Julia wanted to feel validated, to get confirmation that her feelings were worthwhile and valued. She wanted someone to tell her, go for it, a phrase used to encourage a person to do whatever it takes to something work.
Young love is delicate and it's easy to be pessimistic. I mean, how many couples do you know, Sam, who met as teenagers and stayed together for the rest of their lives?
I don't know many, it's true. Neuroscience Dr. Lucy Brown is co-creator of The Anatomy of Love, a website exploring the science of romance. She thinks we need to be more realistic about falling in love, as she explained here to BBC World Service, the conversation.
I wish someone had said, love is wonderful. Yes, go for it, but heartbreak happens and maybe this isn't gonna last. Maybe it is, but maybe it isn't, and just realize that it can be one of the most devastating experiences in your life, but you're gonna get over it.
Dr. Brown thinks it's important to know that relationships can end in heartbreak, feeling of great sadness, as if your heart is broken, especially after the end of a romantic affair.
But she also wants young people to know that whatever happened, they can get over it, feel better again after something has made them unhappy.
Falling in love is one of the great experiences in life, and developing the strength to face whatever happens make it more likely that the story ends happily, unlike the tale of Romeo and Juliet.
I think it's time to reveal the answer to my question. In which Italian city does the story of Romeo and Juliet take place?
I said it was Florence, so was I right?
Well, Florence is a romantic city, but the correct answer is Verona. Verona was little known in Shakespeare time, but nowadays thousands of tourists visit the cities and connected with the history, including the famous balcony where Romeo declared his eternal love. Okay, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned starting with soulmate, a special person who you feel a strong romantic bond to.
Cynicism describes the belief that something will not work out successfully.
If you are validated, you get external confirmation that your action, ideas, or feelings are worthwhile and valuable.
You can use the phrase go for it to encourage someone to make whatever efforts are necessary to get something done.
Heartbreak describes feelings of great sadness, as if the heart is broken.
Finally, to get over something means to feel better again after something has made you unhappy. When again, our 6 minutes are up, but there's time for one more famous saying, and I think it's good advice. Better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
Conversation 5. What can we learn from tutors? Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Beth.
You may have one or know someone who does, and at one time you have been one yourself. I'm talking about tutors.
A tutor is a young child, usually between 2 and 4 years old, who is learning to walk or talking. It's an important stage in a child's development as they learn to know and understand the world around them.
It's also known as the terrible twos. When tutors can't do the things They experience frustration, which often leads to tantrums, a sudden and noisy outburst of anger. We have probably all seen the tears and screams when a young child can't have what they want.
Yes, the famous temper transform. But being a toddler is also an exciting time as a child's personality starts to develop. So, what can we adults learn from toddlers? That's what we'll be finding out in this program, along with some useful new vocabulary.
But first, I have a question for you, Bat. Being a toddler is certainly an important stage in a child's growth. But which of the following statements is true? A. Toddlers are attracted to shapes that resemble the human body. B. Toddlers are more active than at any other time in their lives. Or C. Toddlers can grow up to 3 centimeters during sleep time.
I think toddlers can grow up to 3 centimeters while they sleep.
Okay, but we'll find out if that's the correct answer later in the program. At 2 or 3 years old, there's not much toddlers can do for themselves. They depend on mom or dad to feed, clothe, and care for them. So it's strange to think there's anything adults could learn.
But not according to Dr. Hassan Merali, author of the new book Sleep Well, Take Risk, Disguise the Beast, and father to his own daughter who spoke with BBC Radio 4 program, Woman's Hour.
When I see the tools by themselves, they're doing a lot of things out loud. Little Julie's putting on her mitts and saying, Julie, can do it. And Colton's over inside and he's looking down at his boots. And they're on ground way. And so he says, oh, Colton did this ground. And this idea of self talk is really a way to decrease stress in anxiety provoking situations.
Dr. Merrily observed toddlers talking to themselves out loud. When you talk out loud, you speak so that other people can hear you.
But it's what the tutors were saying that's really interesting. When a little girl called Julie learned how to put on her gloves, she told herself, Julie can do it. This is a special kind of talking out loud known as self talk. Self talk means the message that you tell yourself and the way in which you tell them. It's your inner voice, and in toddlers, it's usually positive and encouraging.
Unfortunately, as we grow up, our self talk often becomes less encouraging and more critical. Instead, a positive, loving inner voice. As adults, we tend to tell ourselves, you can do it, or you're not good. Here's Dr. Merrily again, explaining more to BBC Radio 4 program Woman's Hour.
We often get into a cycle of negative self-talk, and I think one of the best strategies that we can do is give ourselves more positive self-talk. So an easy way to do it is when you are down on yourself and angry with yourself, think about thinking to yourself as a good friend instead of actually you, and you'll notice the difference in how you talk to yourself.
As an adult, you might be down on yourself. If you're down on yourself, you feel disappointed and self critical about yourself. When this happens, your self talk gets very negative. For example, telling yourself you're not good. And this can lead to a negative cycle, a pattern of repeating the same negative tones. over and over again.
This can be a problem, but no for toddlers who are naturally good at talking kindly to themselves and celebrating the little things, like learning to get dressed. The solution for overcritical grown-ups, according to Dr. Merrily, pretend you're talking to a good friend instead to yourself, just like toddlers do.
It seems adults can learn something from your young children. After all, being kind to ourselves when they're not having tantrums. Toddlers really are wonderful little creatures, which reminds me of your question, Neil.
Right, I asked you which statement about toddlers was true.
And I said it was that toddlers can grow up to 3 centimeters while they sleep. Was I right?
I think you know that you're not right, Dad. That was the wrong answer. I'm afraid it's true that toddlers do grow when sleeping, but not as much as 3 centimeters. In fact, the correct answer was that being a toddler is most active period of your whole life, which isn't hard to believe if you live with one. Okay, let's recap the vocabulary we have learned in this program about toddlers, young children who are toddling or learning to walk.
A tantrum is a noisy, uncontrolled outburst of anger, usually from a young child.
If you say something out loud, you say it in a way that other people can hear.
Self-talk refers to the message that you tell yourself and the way in which you tell them. It's your inner voice.
The phrase to be down on yourself means to feel disappointed and self critical about yourself.
And finally, a negative cycle is a pattern of repeating the same negative thoughts over and over again. Something a toddler will never do. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. But remember to join us again next time for more trading topics and useful vocabulary here at 6 Minutes English. Goodbye for now.
Bye! Conversation 6, Optimistics versus Pessimistics. Hello, this is 6 Minutes English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Sam.
We often hear phrases such as dream big or reach for the stars, which reflect an optimistic view of life. Are you an optimistic, Sam?
I hope so. I try to see the positive side of life, even when something bad happens.
It sounds like you are a glass half full person, someone who always thinks that good things will happen.
How about you, Neil? Are you optimistic?
Look, things go wrong all the time. That's a fact of life. Call me a pessimist if you like, but I'm just being realistic.
It sounds like Neil is more of a glass half empty person, but the truth is that the age-old debate between optimists and pessimists is more complex than we think.
Yes, whether you're a sunny optimist or a gloomy pessimist may be determined more by your birthplace and your age than your attitude, as we'll be finding out in this program.
Great! I got a good feeling about this, Neil.
But first, as usual, I have a question for you, Sam. Psychologists define optimism as an attitude which overestimates the chances of good things happening to you, while underestimating the chances of bad things occurring. So, what proportion of the British population do you think describe themselves as optimistic? Is it A, 20%, B, 50%, or C, 80%?
I'll choose the largest, 80%. But then, I'm an optimistic, so I would say that.
Okay, Sam, we'll find out if your optimistic answer is the correct one later in the program. Someone who probably wouldn't agree with you thought is BBC World Service listener Hannah. Hannah grew up in Germany before moving to the United States. She thinks Americans tend to be more optimistic than people back home in Germany, as she told BBC World Service program Growth Science.
I think the stereotypical perception of German is that we're quite pessimistic and that kind of tends to come across as being a bit of a deep down, when in a, actua- when in actuality Germans just tend to be a bit planners for all eventual negative eventualities as well. So that's kind of us being pessimistic, but actually being cautious as opposed to, for example, what I've noticed in America that a lot of people tend to be hyper optimistic. I've always admired how Americans tend to be able to sugarcoat everything.
As a stereotypical pessimist, Hannah sometimes feels like a Debbie Downer. This expression is American slang for someone who makes others feel bad by focusing on the depressing aspects of things.
Americans, on the other hand, are typically seen as optimists who tend to sugarcoat things, make things seem better than they really are.
According to Hannah, many Americans are hyper-optimistic. She uses the prefix hyper to say that there is too much of a certain quality. Hypersensitive people are too sensitive, and hyper-optimistic is too optimistic.
Besides your country of birth, age is another consideration in the optimism debate. When we're young, we have our whole life ahead of us, and it's easier to optimistically believe that everything going to be alright.
The belief that everything is going to be fine is called the optimist bias. It isn't fixed but changes as we age, something neuroscientist Professor Tolly Sharot explained to BBC World Service program Crowd Science.
So it's quite high in kids and teenagers. They think, oh, everything going to be fine, and then it goes down, 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 and it hits rock bottom in your mind like at which point the optimist bias is relatively small and then it starts climbing up again and it's quite high in the elderly population and that goes absolutely against our view of the grumpy old man or woman.
After starting out hiding children, the optimism bias hits rock bottom, the lowest possible level, in middle age, often because of work pressures, family responsibilities, or caring for elderly parents.
But optimism seems to increase again as we get older. This is surprising as it goes against the image we have of the grumpy old man. A phrase to describe someone who complains a lot, is moody, and gets easily annoyed. Optimistic women, meanwhile, can look forward to longer, healthier lives.
Good news for you then, Sam, but I'm sticking with my pessimism. If I anticipate things going wrong, I don't get disappointed when they do.
That's actually a fairly positive way of looking at the things, Neil, but I'm not sure if most people will agree with you, or maybe they would. It depends on the answer to your question.
Right. I asked Sam what proportion of British people describe themselves as optimistic.
And optimistically, I said it was C, 80%.
Which was the correct answer.
Of course it was. Whether you expect good or bad things to happen to you, you're probably right. So why not focus on the sunny side of life, Neil? That way you've got nothing to lose.
Okay, let's recap the vocabulary from this program. Sam, you are certainly a glass half full person, someone with an optimistic attitude to life.
And you're something of a Debbie Downer, American slang for someone who brings everyone down by talking about the negative side of things.
If you sugarcoat something, you make it appear more positive than it really is.
The prefix hyper is used before an adjective to show having too much of that quality. For example, hypercritical means being too critical.
If someone hits rock bottom, it reaches its lowest possible level.
And finally, the phrase grumpy old man can be used to describe someone who always complains, is intolerant, and gets annoyed easily. A bit like Neil.
Unfortunately, our 6 minutes are up, but join us again soon for more trending topics and useful vocabulary here at 6 Minutes English. Goodbye for now.
Bye! Conversation 7: The benefits of doing nothing. Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Beth.
And I'm new. Too, I spent all in meetings, then shopping, then collecting the kids from school. I'm exhausted. But what have you been doing today?
Oh, not much. Just sitting around doing nothing, relaxing and kicking back.
Lucky you. Don't you have work to do?
It may not look it, Neil, but I'm actually as busy as a bee. If you've seen nature documentaries about worker bees flying from flower to flower, you probably think animals are always on the move. But the surprising truth is, away from the cameras, most animals spend most of the time doing absolutely nothing at all.
In natural world, where finding food and shelter is hard work, why have some animals involved to do nothing? And if it's good enough for animals, would being lazy work for humans too? That's what we will be discussing in this program, and as usual, we'll be learning some useful new vocabulary as well.
But first, let me work up the energy to ask you a question, Neil. Of course, some animals have a reputation for longing about. Lions, for example, can sleep up to 20 hours a day. What is the slowest moving animal on Earth? Is it A, the giant tortoise, B, the three-toed sloth, or C, the koala?
Well, I think it's the three. Toad the slot.
Okay, Neil, I reveal the correct answer at the end of the program. Now, it's no surprise that lazy lions love relaxing, but even animals with reputations for being busy spend time doing nothing. Look carefully into an ant's nest, and you'll see around half of them just sitting there motionless. Here's Professor Dan Carbonneau, an expert in insect behavior, discussing the lazy rock ant with Emily Knight, presenter of BBC Radio for program Nature Bank.
John's research has focused on ant colonies, a species called Dinofrans, Rugaxos or the rock ant.
I think ants are a symbol of industries. You know, they have this whole tiny little society going on that's kind of similar to ours. Some idealist version what humans might be if we could only pull it together and all work together we could be as industrious as the ants. But then you look at it. Probably about half the colony is inactive at any given time.
We think ants are industrious or hardworking. Group of ants called colonies seem tiny, perfect societies where everyone works hard for the good of the group.
Then why are so many of them inactive? One possible answer is that they are reserve ants, ready to step in if disease or disaster strike. But could it simply be that they don't work because they don't need to? Would you get out of bed on Monday morning if you didn't have to?
Maybe the ants can teach us a thing or two about relaxing, but wouldn't it get boring just sitting around all day?
Not according to psychologist Dr. Sally Mann. She thinks being productive, working to produce a lot for the amount of resources we use, is overrated. Boredom has its benefits too, as she explains to BBC Radio program Nature Bank.
Good humans have interbred or beer or fire. You know, if we hadn't been bored and were wondering what on earth would happen if we mix this with this. You know, all of these sorts of inventions, the mother of boredom.
But in this world of constant stimulation switching off, it's hard to stand its inner being.
That's why we're constantly sweeping and scrolling and looking for the next big thing and the new thing, and we born of things very quickly. So it's a kind of paradox to get rid of this absent state of boredom is actually to allow more boredom into your life.
Dr. Mann doubts humans will have invented things without the curiosity that comes from being bored. Boredom is a mother of invention, an idea based on the famous proverb, necessity is a mother of invention, an idiom meaning that if you really need to do something, you will think of a way of doing it.
Instead of fearing boredom, we can open up to its benefits by switching off, stopping worrying or thinking about something and relaxing. Slowing down helps do something we can definitely learn from our animal cousins.
I think now's a good time to reveal the answer to my questions, since we have nothing else to do.
You asked me to name the world's slowest animal, and I guessed it. Was the three-toed sloth? Was I right?
That was the correct answer. With a top speed of 30 centimeters per minute, three-toed sloths move so slowly that algae grow on their coats. Okay, let's recap the vocabulary that we learned from this program, starting with the phrase kicking back, stop doing things and relax completely.
The adjective instruction introduced means hardworking.
A colony is a name given to a group of certain animals, including ants and some seabirds.
Someone who is productive is able to produce a lot of for the amount of resource they use.
The proverb necessity is the mother of invention means that if you really need to do something, you will think of a way of doing it.
And finally, to switch off means to stop worrying or thinking about something and relax. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. It must be time to sit down, close your eyes, and just do nothing. Goodbye for now.
Bye! Conversation 8. Sleep in South Korea. Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Sam.
And I'm new.
Sleep. We all need it, some more than others. I can usually get by with around 7 hours at night, but I do like to have a nap, a short sleep. In the afternoon, when I'm not working, of course. How about you, Neil?
I'm always tired, and as soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm out like a light, meaning I go to sleep very quickly.
Well, Neil, you might not survive in South Korea then. Apparently, it's one of the most stressed and tired nations on earth, a place where people work and study longer hours and get less sleep than anywhere else. We'll find out more later and teach some sleep-related vocabulary.
But before we do, you need to give me a question to keep me awake and alert.
Of course I do, and here it is. In the 1960s, American man Randy Gardner set the world record for staying awake for the longest period. Do you know what the time was? Was it A, 64 hours, B, 160 hours, or C, 264 hours?
All sound impossible, but I'll guess letter A, 64 hours. That's nearly 3 days.
Oh well, I'll give you the answer later in the program, assuming you don't doze off. But let's talk more about sleep now. As I mentioned, we all need it to help our mind and body rest and relax. And going without sleep or sleeplessness is bad for our health.
Many things can stop us sleeping, and some of them are pressure, anxiety, and stress caused by your job. And in South Korea, research has shown it's become increasingly difficult to switch off. Stop thinking about work and relax. South Koreans sleep fewer hours and have higher rates of depression and suicide than almost anywhere else.
Siwon has been reporting of this for the BBC World Service documentary podcast. He met one worker who explained why she never got time to relax. Siwon BBC reporter separating work and rest time has been a recurring issue for Ji-an. In her last job, her office hours were long, like most Korean firms. Her employer didn't think about any boundaries. They encroached on almost all her time.
They told me you need to be contactable 24/7. There will always be someone from work reaching out to me, like needing to get something done right now. Even just thinking about it, I get really agitated.
So that stressed out worker got agitated just thinking about the situation. She got worried or upset. That's because office hours in South Korea are long and some employers expect their workers to be contactable all the time.
Yes, there are no boundaries, so no limits or rules about when employers can contact their employees. Therefore, as this employee said, were encroaching. It gradually took over her leisure time. Stress like this can lead to insomnia, a condition where you are unable to sleep.
The BBC Discovery podcast goes on to explain that offering a cure for this sleeplessness has become big business. There are sleep clinics where doctors assess people overnight and sleep cafes that offer places to nap in the middle of the working day.
One other issue in South Korea that's affecting sleep is the bali bali culture, meaning quickly, quickly, or hurry, hurry. People are constantly in a rush.
Dr. Lee spoke to the World Services Discovery podcast about the effects of this and how even trying to take medication to help sleep has its problems.
People take like 10 or 20 pills per one night, and because they cannot fall asleep even with the medication, they drink alcohol on top of that, and they experience side effects of the medication. People can sleepwalk and go to the refrigerator, eat a lot of things unconsciously, uncooked food, and they don't remember the next day. There were cases of car accidents in the center of Seoul, which has been sleepwalking patients.
So some people are taking lots of pills to help them sleep, but they are not working, so they are drinking alcohol as well. This leads to side effects, unpleasant and unexpected results from the medication.
It seems one of these side effects is sleepwalking, moving around and doing things while still asleep.
Well, if sleeping pills aren't working, there's always medication or working less.
At least South Koreans are getting some sleep, unlike Randy Gardner, who I asked you about earlier.
Yeah, he holds the record for staying awake the longest, and I thought he stayed awake for 64 hours. Was I right?
No, Neil, not long enough. Randy Gardner stayed awake for an incredible 264.4 hours, that's 11 days and 25 minutes, in January 1964.
That's one record I really don't want to beat.
Well, before you know though, Neil, let's recap some of the vocabulary we've been discussing, including go up like a light, which means you go to sleep very quickly.
When you switch off, you stop concentrating on one thing and start thinking about something else.
A lack of sleep or rest can make you agitated. You get worried or upset.
Encroach means gradually take over.
When you take medication and it gives you an unpleasant and unexpected result, we call these side effects.
And sleeping walking describes moving around and doing things while still asleep.
That's our 6 minutes up. Goodbye and sweet dreams.
Goodbye.
9. Rabbits, cuddly friends, or cunning trickers. Hello, this is 6 Minute English. I'm Neil and joining me is Rob.
Hello.
Rob, when we think of Easter, what do you think of?
Chocolate.
Well, yes, chocolate Easter eggs are an obvious symbol of Easter, but there is an animal people often associate with Easter.
Rabbits. Cute, adorable, and fluffy. What's not to like about a rabbit?
Well, not everyone is a fan of them. By not a fan of, I mean they don't like them. Some people think they are a pet, but we'll be telling you more about rabbits shortly.
That's good to know. Well, I'll tell you what I'm a fan of, and that is your quiz question. So, what are you going to ask me today?
It's all about with rabbits. In the last rabbit survey in 1995, how many were estimated to exist in UK? Is it 370,500? B. 3,750,000? C. 37,500,000?
I know rabbits are everywhere in the UK, but not 37 millions of them. So, I'll go for B. 3,007,500.
Well, you'll have to wait until the end of the program to find out. But you're right when you say rabbits are everywhere in UK. It's probably true in other countries too. You could say they are endemic, meaning very common or strongly established in place or situation.
But are they a typical British wild animal?
They are now, but it's believed they were brought to the country by invaders. Some say the Romans, others the Normans, but they eventually spread across the UK. Victoria Dickinson is the author of the book called Rabbit, and she's been telling the BBC Radio 4 program Coasting the Heart about what helped them spread.
It was really by the middle of the 17th century when people really started to think about rabbits as being particularly British, and certainly there were more rabbits in Britain than in the rest of the Europe. There was a calculation done that there are over 400 villages and towns in Britain with the word Warren in their name. So the rabbits were raised in Britain by they really kept to their warrens until there was the rise of the fox hunt. When the predators disappeared, rabbits do what rabbits do best, and they start to multiply and become wild feral rabbits throughout the land.
So, Victoria knows a thing or two about rabbits and say the word warren used to in town and village names is evidence that they've been in the UK since in the mid 17th century, and warren is the area underground where rabbits live with lots of walls and connected passages.
But today we use the word warren to mean a building of part of a town where there are a lot of confusing passageways or streets. It's a kind of place where you get lost.
But it was rabbit warrens where rabbits would live until hunting, particularly fox hunting, was introduced and that killed many of the rabbit's predators. A predator is an animal that hunts and kills another animal.
Now, Victoria was talking about feral rabbits. So, wild rabbits, not the sort people keep as pets in a rabbit hutch. Moving on, I'm interested to know why not everyone loves these cute little creatures. I mean, I think of the rabbit characters in the Breton pottery history.
Well, they weren't always well behaved, and Victoria Dickinson spoke to the Costing the Art program about this. What word did she use to describe rabbits having the two opposite sides to their character?
The rabbit is a paradoxical animal. It has a lot of face, if you will. It's both will and team. It's timid but also has its reputation and tricks. Rabbit if you think of Peter Bottomtail, of your things of red rabbits. And I think our relationship with rabbit is the rabbit of the nursery rhyme, the rabbit of childhood, or you think of Peter Rabbit.
She said the rabbit are paradoxical animals. That's the word that describes them having two opposite characteristics.
Yes, we think of them as well, maybe as trickster, someone who deceives people to get what they want, like Peter. What a cheeky rabbit!
But we also think of rabbits as tame. We have nursery rhythms about them. Kinds have soft cuddly rabbits toys. I said that they're the perfect symbol for Easter.
Okay, Rob, if you say so, but now let me answer the question I said you earlier. In the last survey of rabbits in 1995, how many were estimated to exist in the UK? Was it 370,500? B. 3,750,000? And C. 37,500,000?
I said B, 3,007,500.
Well, you're wrong, bro. A government survey put the population in the UK at 37.5 million, so a lot more. But despite its reputation, a recent survey suggests rabbit number in the UK have declined by around 60% over the last 20 years.
That I said news. But let's cheer ourselves up with a recap of the vocabulary we've discussed today, starting with a fan of.
When someone is a fan of something, they're keen on it. They like it a lot. If you're not a fan of something, you don't like it.
We mentioned endemic, meaning very common or strongly established in a place or situation.
And we talked about warren, an underground area where rabbits live, but also a building or a part of a town where there are a lot of confusing passages, or a street where it is easy to get lost.
A predator is an animal that hunts and kills another animal.
Paradoxical describes things that have two opposing characteristics, making it hard to understand.
And a tricker is someone who deceives people to get what they want.
Well, I'm not trickster. It really has been 6 minutes, so it's time to call it a day. Please join us next time.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Conversation 10. The history of swimming. Hello, this is 6 Minutes English from BBC Learning English. I'm new.
And I'm Georgina.
Can you swim, Georgina?
I can. I learned to swim as a child, and now I enjoy swimming for exercise and to relax.
In the summer, hundreds of keen swimmers like Georgina head up the swimming pools, lakes, and beaches to take a dip. An informal idiom meaning go for a swim.
Swimming has many health benefits, and since ancient times has been used to promote strength and well-being.
But swimming's not just about exercise. There's far more to it than beneath the surface, as we'll be finding out in this program on the history of swimming.
Although evidence suggests that ancient Mediterranean people divide eagerly into temple pleasure pools, lakes, and the sea. Other cultures have swum against the tide, another swimming eating there, meaning not to follow what everyone else is doing.
Someone who didn't enjoy swimming was the poet Lord Byron. He wrote poems popularizing the sport, and in 1010 swam the Hellespont, a stretch of water separating Europe from Asia. But in which modern country can the Hellespont be found? That's my quiz question, Georgina. Is it A. Greece, B. Cyprus, or C. Turkey?
I think Lord Byron visited Istanbul, so I said C, Turkey.
Okay, we'll find out the answer at the end of the program. For all its good points, swimming seems to have lost its appeal in Europe after the decline of the Roman Empire.
According to historical and swimming enthusiast Professor Kevin Dawson, the rise of Christian beliefs discourages women, as he explained here to BBC World Service program, The Forum.
You have some beliefs that water is this unselfish space, a natural space for human beings. It's a perpetuation of the code that says before good create a land, or that water is a mechanism for punishment like the Great Flood story or Pharaoh's army being destroyed in the Red Sea. But then there are also beliefs that swimming is immodest. Most people at the time swam nude, and so church officials discouraged swimming because they felt that it led to immodest behavior.
As well as being considered unsafe or chaotic, swimming was seen as immodest, shocking because it shows too much of the body.
This was because most people at the time swam nude, naked without clothes.
Another place with a long history of swimming is the remote Maldives Islands in the Indian Ocean.
In the Maldives, access to shallow, warm seawater, lakes-colored lagoons, makes it an unbeatable place for swimming.
But even on a tropical island, things haven't always gone swimmingly, as Dibber and Maldives resident Michael Rosen told BBC World Service program The Forum.
Listen for the reason Michael's given for the change in people's attitudes to swimming in the Maldives.
Most citizens of the Maldives have had a middle-like world level, given that they could be world leaders in swimming. But in the 1960s, the government recruited a lot of teachers from India and Sri Lanka. They didn't know anything about the water culture, and they noticed that the young students played hockey. They were in the lagoons and swimming soon got crowded open, but now the government and the local organization they try to reclaim swimming.
Did you hear the reason Michael gave me?
Yes, he said that young students were playing hockey to go swimming in the lagoons. Play hockey is an informal way of saying stay away from school without permission.
Right, and that means swimming quickly got frowned upon or disapproved of.
It seems a bit unfair since there was already strong culture of swimming in the Maldives which the raving teachers didn't fully appreciate.
Well, I know which I rather do. Sit in a classroom or swim in a warm tropical lagoon.
Swimming, right? But then you would never have learned about Lord Byron.
Yes, in your quiz question, you asked me about Lord Byron swimming the Hellespont, a strait of water separating Europe from Asia.
I asked you in which country the Hellespont can be found. Is it A. Greece, B. Cyprus, or C. Turkey? What did you say?
I said C, Turkey. Was I right?
Yes, you were, Georgina. The Hellespont, also known as the Straits of Dardanelles, is a 6-kilometer wide stretch of water in Turkey.
Let's recap the vocabulary from his program on swimming, which some people informally call taking a dip.
Someone who swims against the tide refuses to do what everyone else is doing.
In the past, swimming was considered immodest, shocking because it showed too much of the body.
Another word for naked or not wearing any clothes is nude.
Children who played hockey stayed away from school without permission.
And finally, if something is frowned upon, it's disapproved of.
That's all for our dive into the deep end of the vocabulary of swimming. As we've discovered, there's plenty of idioms and expressions related to swimming and water.
And check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Don't forget, we have an app to which you can download for free from the app stores. We help you learn English on the move, grammar, vocabulary, and interesting topics. We have them all. Visit our website. Get the app.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.